Going back to work after being a mummager raising kids can be daunting for most. Adapting to change, leadership, navigating your future career path and just staying relevant are some of the things we will be talking about with our next guest, career expert and founder of Change Meridian, boss lady Michelle Gibbings. Thanks for joining us, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I've ever had anyone call me boss lady.
Sorry, I always have to add a little bit of slang to it. But I know as a mum who's been on mat leave for quite a bit of time, not saying the year.
We are.
I'm going to get straight into it. How do we stay relevant? And, because the working environment's always changing. So how do you keep on top of things and still keep relevant?
It's stay connected. So stay connected to your industry and your profession, and that may mean also staying connected to former work colleagues, because your work colleagues are part of your network, which is really important for when you want to get back into the workforce. And stay connected to where your industry or profession is going. It can be really easy to sort of distance yourself, but even if you can find 10 minutes a week or 15 minutes a week to read a news article or a journal or watch a TED talk or something that is connected to your profession, so you know where that industry is going and you're staying connected to it.
Because it can be really intimidating. Like, I'm literally at that phase where my youngest is going to school next year. That's on my mind at the moment. Should women in this position feel intimidated? Is there a reason for us to feel intimidated, sort of going back into the workforce?
Just go back. You've been a stay-at-home mum, but also doing your own business.
I've had a business at home, but I haven't, been in the workforce as such for about 10 years.
Which is the story for a lot of mums.
And do we have a right to feel sort of intimidated, or should we be like, you know what, hang on, I've learnt some skills, I can do this?
You've absolutely learnt skills, and you've learnt skills in a different environment. And so I always say to people, when you're thinking about going back into the workforce, the first thing to do is almost like a skills audit. And you sit and you look at all of the skills that you've got and which of them are transferable and adaptable. Because during the time that you've been at home, you might have been involved in a PNC, you might have been involved in fundraising, you might have been on the school board. So there will have been a whole raft of things that you've done where you've acquired new skills, and it's owning those skills and seeing that as an important part of you in terms of how you've developed, so that when you're going back into the workforce, you're going back into the workforce proud. Here's all this great stuff that I've done, and I had all these skills before. I haven't lost those skills either.
So employers valuing these skills? Are you seeing a change?
I'm certainly seeing a change in terms of the workforce, in that it's much more flexible. And these days, it's much easier for women to work part-time, but also work from home. I know some organisations where it's not just the work from home, they're specifically setting up units that are work at home, which means they're designing it that they don't intend for you to ever step foot into the head office. You can work at home in a way that suits you, in a time frame that suits you. So there's a huge amount of flexibility, and that's the benefit of technology.
That's a really good thing for businesses to be looking at, so that women don't get stuck in this, I'm not good enough for anything.
Because that happens to a lot of us.
It does. And also what it means is that employers are losing this massive talent base. And we know that there's a shortage of talent in the workplace. And so why would you let talented females just walk out the door, not find a way to keep it?
And if someone's going to look after you, I just think mums going back would be so loyal and work really hard, especially if they feel like they're being looked after. Like, that's a win for everyone.
Absolutely. And I see that all the time. I always say to women, though, don't let them take advantage of you. I've had women in teams that I've worked with before, and they've gone, I'm going to work 4 days a week. And I go, great, awesome. Actually, they're going to end up doing 5 days a week, but they get paid for 4. And I remember saying to one of my team members, I'm going to start paying you for 5 days a week. And she goes, but I can't work the 5th day. I said, no, I don't expect you to turn up in the office, but you are actually delivering 5 days worth of value. So be clear that when you go part-time, that you really are still working part-time.
Would you advise mums who, have young children to go back part-time, or to keep their foot still in the door, or not, or just go back full-time? What would your advice be?
I think it depends on your circumstances. And I always say everybody's unique, and you need to understand the context and the environment that they're in. But if they can keep a foot in the workplace, that certainly makes it easier down the track for when they're looking to go back full-time, because they've still got those connections and they've still maintained a skill set in a linear type of fashion.
What would you say to mums that never foresee themselves going back to work and think they're going to be a stay-at-home mum always?
Well,
there are some of us.
Yeah. Well, I honestly think you need to, it's almost like a risk policy where life will throw you curveballs and life never works out exactly as we've all planned it.
Yeah.
And everything in life's a trade-off. If you decide to do one thing, often it means you can't do something else. And so if you're thinking you're going to be a stay-at-home mum forever, I would just make sure that there is something in the background that you've still got that you can draw on if circumstances change for you.
Like
Because
what?
Like what?
Well, the circumstances might mean, you know, your partner might die, you might get divorced, whatever, and then you're left alone. But you've had this expectation of a life that is then not a life that's going to pan out. And so it is really important for women to look after themselves, to take care of themselves, to see that they still matter. And so that, yep, absolutely. Giving up your career to look after your children is a really rewarding, and people make a conscious choice about that, but also do it in a way that's wise, that you're not then walking away from everything, that you don't then have some power still in that relationship with a partner.
We were talking about intimidation before and going back and just mentally being sort of frightened of that space. What about remuneration packages? Should women sort of just go in and go, you know what, I'll accept whatever they're offering just to get my foot in the door? Or do you feel like they should be able to say, hang on, I'm actually worth this and speak up? What do you say to those women?
Negotiating is a really important trait, and actually understanding how to negotiate. I do a lot of work with women on this because typically we don't put ourselves forward, and I always say to people...
And we're not good at negotiating.
Well,
Can we get some tips on that?
maybe I'll come back. That's another episode. Because I always say to people, don't ask, don't get. And in my days when I worked in corporate, the men would always ask for the pay rise. The women just assumed that it would get figured out. And I always say to people, be really deliberate. Know the industry, know your worth, and then be prepared to ask for it.
So don't be afraid to ask when you're going back, because I'm like, heck, you know, what's the path that you're supposed to walk here?
Yeah, well, you do need to ask, but you ask at a certain point in the process, and so you also need to know what's reasonable and what's not reasonable. And I often say to people, ask for something that makes you feel a little nauseous. I like that.
I'm getting anxiety already.
Because then you know you're probably in the ballpark.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
my daughter went for an interview recently and they asked her what she thought she should get paid.
Yeah.
I would find that really intimidating.
That's something we're not used
No,
to
no.
in our generation.
Well, it's a different generation and workforce, and it's changing constantly. Like you see that people can work from home now, like you mentioned before. So
And it's really wise that you sort of say to keep in touch with previous colleagues or, you know, just something that's going on in the industry you're in.
and it also sounds like we need to plan.
Yeah.
Planning is really important. Think long term, don't think short term.
Yeah. It's been great having you. Thank you so much,
My
Michelle,
pleasure.
for the career tips. If you want to hear more of Michelle's career tips, hit us up at Mums at the Table or go to michellegibbings.com. Ladies, I love your work. Thanks for the chat as always. And you at home, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to share, like and subscribe if you are watching us online. Link up with us on social media pages because there's always room for more Mums at the Table. Until next time, God bless.